17 suitcases, 17 million euros, 17 names that could collapse a nation. Captain Ibrahim Traore stood still beneath the floodlights, a paper clenched in his hand. A list not just of people, but of betrayal, corruption, and sold-out sovereignty. The midnight air was thick with heat and history. On the tarmac, a private French jet idled, its engines still running, its pilot awaiting takeoff clearance that would never come. Then came the order, "Surround the plane." Red berets moved like shadows. The aircraft was encircled in seconds, wheels blocked, communications cut. Traore's boots echoed across the concrete as he approached the jet. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Pull the suitcases out," he said. One by one, they were unloaded. Black. Heavy. Stamped with diplomatic seals. The pilot was detained. The French ambassador said nothing, his face pale behind tinted windows. Inside the VIP terminal, staff and onlookers pressed against the glass, breath fogging. The pains. They all knew. This wasn't just a search. It was a reckoning. And then, with the entire airport holding its breath, Captain Traore looked at the first suitcase. He gave a quiet, final command. "Open them." What would be revealed next would not just shock Burkina Faso, it would shake the world. It didn't start with the suitcases. It started with whispers, quiet ones. From border towns, from customs officers, from inside the Ministry of Energy. Too many shipments with no paperwork, too many deals that bypassed every official channel, too much gold, disappearing, and too many eyes looking the other way. Captain Ibrahim Traore had come to power with a promise. Burkina Faso will no longer be robbed in silence. That promise was more than rhetoric. It was personal. He knew what history had done to his country, how the ground beneath their feet, rich with gold, uranium, and now oil, had never belonged to the people who lived on it. How foreign companies came with smiles and contracts and left with billions. But this time something was different. For weeks, his intelligence teams had been watching, tracking irregular movements, monitoring diplomats who seemed to operate above the law. And then came the report. A French diplomatic jet was scheduled to leave at midnight. No cargo manifest, no destination disclosure. Only one detail stood out. 17 diplomatic suitcases. Traore didn't hesitate. He summoned his most trusted men. Intelligence Chief Colonel Kabore, Justice Minister Aminata Traore, Airport Director Ousmane Ndio, and a small circle of loyal commanders. They called it Operation Red Dust, a silent, precise, zero-hour interception. But it wasn't just about stopping one plane. It was about pulling a thread that could unravel decades of hidden dealings. The suitcases were the key, but the real question was, what would they unlock? No press, no leaks, no foreign embassies warned, only a sealed runway, a jet full of secrets, and a nation on the verge of discovering just how much of its wealth had been stolen. At exactly 11:57 p.m., the jet touched the runway. At 12:03 a.m., the airport was sealed. At 12:08 a.m., the pilot was in custody. By 12:10, the 17 suitcases were on the table, and by 12:12, Captain Traore gave the order that would shake the world. Open them, because what was about to be revealed wasn't just a crime. It was an empire of betrayal, decades in the making, and a reckoning decades overdue. The room fell silent as the first suitcase was unlocked. Thick, black, diplomatic seals intact. 2 soldiers lifted it onto the table. Colonel Kabore photographed every angle. "Evidence," he said quietly, "so no one can say this didn't happen." The latch clicked open. Inside, stacks of cash. Neatly bound, fresh, crisp, sealed with the insignia of the French Central Bank. Euro notes perfectly organized, each bundle worth 10,000, each suitcase €1,000,000. Justice Minister Aminata whispered what everyone was thinking. This isn't aid. This is extraction. But this was just the beginning. The second suitcase opened, revealing gold bars, heavy, marked, each one stamped with Burkina Faso's national seal. "These are ours," said Captain Traore. "From our soil, dug by our people, stolen in silence." Third suitcase brought documents, hundreds of them. State contracts, mining maps, confidential surveys. Details of gold, uranium, and newly discovered oil fields, none of which had been announced to the public. Traore flipped through them in disbelief. These aren't leaks. These are state secrets. And they were headed for Paris. Suitcase 4. Surveillance equipment, tiny listening devices, button-sized cameras, drones no larger than a bird, each tagged with markings from NATO allies, and one, a jammer, bearing the NSA logo. Aminata leaned in. Africa is not just being robbed, it's being watched. Suitcase 5. Fake identities, passports, diplomatic cards, driver's licenses, but all with the same faces. Men who had entered Burkina Faso as journalists, NGO workers, even human rights observers, now exposed as spies in rotation. Traore was calm, but his voice cut like steel. They weren't just stealing gold. They were preparing for something much worse. The sixth suitcase chilled the room. Military documents, deployment maps, armory inventories, classified communication logs. "This came from our general staff's safe," said Traore. "Only 3. People have access." 4, corrected Traore. "You forgot the cleaning woman, Mariam. 20 years in that office. The most invisible person in the room, because no one suspects a ghost." They continued. Suitcase 7, more money, this time in dollars, yuan, pounds. A global bribery fund for every taste. Suitcase 8, luxury items, Swiss watches, designer bags, expensive gadgets, each with handwritten notes for the minister's wife. A gift for the governor's son, with gratitude from Paris. Suitcase 9, blackmail, photos of officials in foreign hotels, receipts, transfers, hidden recordings, everything labeled, dated, categorized. They weren't just buying loyalty, said Aminata. They were owning lives. Suitcase 10 revealed something more insidious. Medical records, private health documents, security meeting transcripts, word-for-word accounts of private discussions held in secure rooms. Traore was stunned. "We swept that room for bugs." "Maybe there weren't any," said Traore. "Maybe there was a person." The room went cold. Suitcase 11. Propaganda. Materials, posters, videos, brochures, all promoting a new leader for Burkina Faso, General Laurent Compaoré. The man believed dead in a failed coup years earlier, filmed in Paris, polished, funded. "The coup didn't die," Traore muttered. "It just went dormant." Suitcase 12. Poisons, odorless, tasteless. Powders designed to mimic heart attacks. Capsules that cause sudden strokes. Vials labeled in code. "Not just weapons," said Traore. "Assassination tools." Then came Suitcase 13, hard drives, USBs, backup disks, Burkina Faso's entire digital infrastructure, copied, government systems, bank servers, telecommunications networks. "With this," said the tech expert, "they could shut us down, freeze accounts, cut power, collapse a country without firing a bullet." Suitcase 14, oil contracts, signed by someone using Traore's name, forged, giving 80% of national oil reserves to a French corporation. A 50-year deal. Suitcase 15, a list, thousands of names, journalists, activists, teachers. Clergy, judges, each name marked with a code, K, to be silenced, T, to be arrested, exile you, to be eliminated. At the top of the list, Captain Ibrahim Traore, the 16th suitcase. Satellite images, every military base, every depot, every airstrip, labeled, measured, targeted. "This," whispered Aminata, "isn't monitoring. It's an invasion blueprint. And then, the 17th suitcase, just one file. Black cover, gold lettering. Operation Sankara. Secret. The room fell silent. Inside, the plan that killed Thomas Sankara in 1987. And the updated version to eliminate Traore in 2024. Same playbook, same goal, same betrayal. Captain Traore closed the file. His voice was quiet. You stole our leader once. You will not do it again. The 17 suitcases were no longer just evidence. They were the proof of a war waged in shadows. And now, that war had been dragged into the light. The final suitcase closed with a dull thud. The weight of its contents, more than metal, more than money, hung in the air like a storm about to break. Ambassador Jacques Dubois stood frozen. Sweat trickled from his temple, soaking the collar of his expensive French suit. His lips parted, but no words came. Across from him, Captain Ibrahim Traore didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The silence said everything. Then finally Dubois spoke, voice cracking with desperation. This must be a misunderstanding. A violation of diplomatic immunity, protected under the Vienna Convention. Traore raised his hand. Just once. The room went still again. Immunity, he said, is not a shield for thieves. A diplomatic passport is not a license to loot a nation. Behind him, Colonel Cabore laid out the files like evidence in a courtroom. Photographs, maps, bank records, secret agreements. The evidence was overwhelming, the betrayal undeniable. Still, Dubois stammered. These actions, these documents, I didn't know. Justice Minister Aminata cut in sharply. You didn't know what was in the suitcases you loaded onto a midnight flight? You didn't know about the poisons, the forged signatures, the plan to kill our president? Her voice trembled, but it wasn't fear. It was fury held in check by discipline. Don't insult us, she said. Not tonight. Dubois looked to the windows, the runway beyond. 2 guards stood by the doors, stoic, unmoving. There would be no escape. No last-minute clearance from Paris. No invisible hand reaching in to save him. Only accountability. Captain Traore took a slow step forward. How many years have you played this game? How many governments have you bought? How many of our fathers mined gold that never reached their families? How many leaders did you make kneel? And how many like Sankara did you kill to keep Africa silent? No answer. Only the quiet hum of the grounded jet. Only the faint crackle of the old air conditioner. Only the truth, now spoken aloud. This country, Traore said, will kneel no more. He turned to Cabore. The 17 names. Arrest them. Their homes, their offices. Search everything. Freeze their assets. Interrogate. The people deserve the truth. Yes, sir. Aminata, he continued. Emergency session of Parliament. Every document shown to the people. No more secrets. Understood, Mr. President. Dio, Traore said finally. Close the airport. No one enters. No one leaves. As you command. And then, turning back to the ambassador. You, Monsieur Dubois, will return to Paris, but not alone. You'll carry with you the truth, every document, every photograph, every suitcase, and you'll deliver a message. Traore walked toward the window. The sun was rising. Africa's sky bathed the horizon in gold. Tell them, he said, Burkina Faso is no longer a colony. Our gold is ours. Our uranium is ours. Our oil is ours. Our future is ours. He turned, eyes hard as steel. Tell your generals, your ministers, your puppets, they may come. But this time, we are not afraid. And as Dubois stood speechless, the world shifted. A chapter closed, a curtain lifted, a continent stirred, because this was no longer just about one plane or one night. It was the beginning of something bigger, the return of dignity, the restoration of truth, and the rise of a nation that refused to bow again. The sun rose over Ouagadougou, But this was no ordinary dawn. It was the beginning of an awakening. At 6 a.m., Burkina Faso's national television cut its usual programming. Across the country, villages, cities, schools, markets, millions of eyes turned to the screen. There stood Captain Ibrahim Traore. Behind him, 17 suitcases lined in a row like a new national monument. "My fellow citizens," he began, "last night something extraordinary happened. For the next 2 hours, the nation watched in stunned silence. One by one, he opened each. Suitcase, cash, weapons, secret government documents, spy devices, bribery logs, poison, fake identities, stolen geological maps, assassination plans. He didn't just reveal evidence. He told a story of betrayal, manipulation, and theft, but also of resistance, courage, and truth. This, he said, is what they did behind our backs. This is what they didn't want you to see." And when he reached the final suitcase, Operation Sankara, the truth became undeniable. "They killed our hero," he said. "And now they want to kill his legacy. But not this time." When the broadcast ended, the silence outside didn't last long. Within minutes, the streets of Ouagadougou were filled. People waved flags, banged drums, sang old revolutionary songs. Elders cried. Children marched. Workers raised fists. Placards read, "Sankara lives. The gold is ours. Africa will not kneel." And from a single viral phrase emerged the rallying cry of a continent. "We want our 17 suitcases too." Across West Africa, the spark became a wildfire. In Mali, President Goïta ordered full audits of every French mining contract. In Niger, youth flooded the capital demanding transparency and national control of uranium reserves. In Guinea, a general declared, "We will not export poverty and import humiliation." In every capital, the same chant rose from the streets, "This is our time." At the United Nations, France tried to invoke diplomatic immunity, but the evidence was overwhelming. The documents, the images, they had already spread worldwide. The Say, representative from Burkina Faso, stood, holding up a single suitcase photograph. "You want to talk about law?" he asked. "Let's talk about justice." And country after country began to shift. China declared support for Burkina Faso's sovereignty. Russia warned against neo-colonial aggression. Even American diplomats, usually silent, advised strategic restraint. In Paris, the mood was panic, emergency meetings, crisis talks. The French president demanded retaliation, but his foreign minister said quietly, "The world is watching. If we move now, we lose all of Africa." Because the truth was clear, door had been opened, and no one could close it again. Burkina Faso wasn't alone anymore. It had become a symbol of dignity reclaimed, of secrets exposed, of a people wide awake, and the world, every government, every corporation, every citizen, was watching what would happen next. The headlines in Paris were unambiguous. Traore, dictator or hero. Burkina Faso declares economic war on France. 17 suitcases that shook the empire. In the Élysée Palace, chaos reigned. Ministers argued. Generals fumed. The president demanded immediate retaliation. "This is a humiliation," he shouted. "We must act, freeze aid, pull contracts, use pressure." But the foreign minister cautioned restraint. "Mr. President, this is not 1960. The world is watching. The evidence is overwhelming. If we intervene now, we lose not just Burkina Faso, we lose the entire continent." Still, pressure built. A dossier was leaked. Economic sanctions were being prepared. Threats of military consequences whispered. Through diplomatic back channels. But Traore was unmoved. At the presidential palace in Ouagadougou, he stood with his cabinet. "Let them come," he said calmly. "We have gold. We have uranium. We have oil. And now we have each other." He outlined the response, a defense pact with Mali and Niger. oil trade agreements with China, mining technology cooperation with Russia, and most crucially, a plan to leave the CFA franc. We will print our own money, he declared. We will establish our own bank. We will build a common African market, and we will never again beg for what is already ours. Inside Burkina Faso, the momentum continued. Judges, unsealed indictments. 17 high-level officials were arrested. Interrogations led to dozens more. A vast network of corruption and foreign infiltration unraveled name by name. But Traore made one thing clear. We will not become them. Every trial will be public, every conviction by evidence. We are not seeking revenge. We are restoring justice. The French embassy reduced staff. The military bases in Burkina Faso were quietly dismantled. Traore gave them a deadline to leave. They complied. And just when the world thought the fire might fade, Laurent Compaoré tried to return. Backed by mercenaries, funded by foreign hands, he crossed the border with a single goal: coup d'etat. But Traore was ready. The ambush was swift, bloodless. The mercenaries surrendered without a fight. Compaoré was arrested, and in court he confessed everything. France gave money, weapons, promised me support. But when I needed them, they vanished. His words echoed like a warning. The old empire shadow had grown thin, and Traore, once underestimated, now stood as the immovable figure of a new era. Months passed. But what began that night at the airport did not fade. It deepened. Across Burkina Faso, change was no longer a slogan. It was visible. Schools rose in rural villages that had never seen a classroom. Clinics opened in dusty towns where medicine was once a luxury. Jobs were created for thousands of young people once forgotten. Farms received funding. Roads were repaired. Electricity reached new communities. And for the first time in decades, the nation's wealth stayed in the nation. International economists, long dismissive, coined a new phrase: the Burkina model. But for Captain Ibrahim Traore, there was no need for celebration. There's no miracle here, he said in a televised address. We're simply using what has always been ours. The 17 suitcases, once symbols of theft, were placed in a new building in Ouagadougou, a museum, the National Independence Museum. Every day, students walked through its halls. They saw the money, the weapons, the spy equipment, the fake passports, the assassination orders, and the file labeled Operation Sankara, and beside every suitcase was a plaque that read, "Truth does not die in silence. Freedom is earned when lies are unmasked." An old teacher explained to his class, "In these suitcases, children, was the future they stole from us, but our president, he opened them, and we took that future back." One little girl stood quietly, staring at a gold bar stamped with Burkina Faso's seal. She looked up at her mother and whispered, "Mama, is it really ours now?" Her mother smiled, eyes full of tears. "Yes, my daughter. It's ours now. Forever." And the girl smiled, because for the first time she knew something unshakable. She had a future, a real future, a free future, a future opened by 17 suitcases, and by a people who chose to never sleep again.